Hey everybody, I'm Joe, and today we're doing another character building tip for the Marvel Multiverse TTRPG. Here we go. This is the third part of our series on tips to build effective characters for the Marvel Multiverse TTRPG. These are supposed to be tips that help you build a well-rounded character that not only plays well at the table, but accomplishes the things that you want to achieve. And today, our tip is going to be to think about movement. Movement is pretty easy to understand in Marvel Multiverse. We assume that a character is average size when the character is created, unless there are reasons to say otherwise. An average size character has 25 feet of movement speed, but this can be altered. First, a movement speed is changed by size. There are many sizes in Marvel Multiverse, and for every size you are larger than average, you gain an additional 5 feet of movement speed. For every size you are smaller than average, you lose 5 feet of movement speed. Moreover, for every 5 points of agility that you have, you gain an additional 5 feet of movement speed. This allows you to build characters that can be very fast if that's what you want. But the key thing to remember is that movement speed is walking or running, and this is by no means the only type of movement you should be thinking about. Let's take a look at building interesting combat or just problem-solving scenarios or exploration scenarios from the point of view of the narrator. We have to think about the scenes in front of us three-dimensionally. I need to think about things that fly in the air. I need to think about the height of buildings. I need to think about bodies of water. I need to think about pits or traps in the ground. And of course, interesting locales where perhaps the ground is difficult terrain or is in and of itself dangerous. When a narrator thinks about the environment and thinks about the environment three-dimensionally, the game gets more interesting. And this is true of every TTRPG. And so if you have built a character that has really good ground movement, but no other type of movement, the second that a scene is described three-dimensionally and or interactively, you start having big problems with your character and achieving the things you want to achieve. And so proactively, you need to think about alternative forms of movement. So I want to give you some of my favorite ways to be able to adapt or add to your movement in Marvel Multiverse. One thing I'd like to point out, this video is being recorded before the release of the full game, which is happening in a few weeks. And so there might be additions to this list that I would add after the publication of the full rulebook. And of course, if that happens, I will do an update video in order to add on to this. But here are the ones from the playtest rulebook and rules updates up to 1.3. The first and most obvious way of enhancing your movement is flight, right? There are 3 flight powers in the game, and they can add incredible capacities to you and your teammates. Flight 1 gives you a really nice flying speed, the same in combat as out of combat. Flight 2 gives you a flying speed outside of combat, which is incredibly fast and allows you to cover huge distances. But then you also have group flight, which allows you to lift up all of your companions and fly at half your normal flight speed. These are wonderful powers, and they can add utility not just to you, but also to your team. The next thing I'd like to point out is the trait free running. Now, I've spoken about this on this channel before, but free running is not very well named. It specifically says that you automatically have an edge on all movement checks. And this would be to dodge obstacles or be able to move through difficult terrain or to keep up with somebody. But in the end, this is all movement, not all running. And any type of movement counts. Swimming, running, gliding on webs, flying, any way that you have enhanced your movement can then be enhanced any more by taking the free running trait. It's a really nice way of being able to improve your mobility in all circumstances. Highly recommended for any character that needs to be able to get to places efficiently and easily. The next way that I would take a look at enhancing my mobility in this game is from the Spider Powers power set, and it's web gliding. Web gliding is exactly what it sounds like. It allows you to shoot webs and to swing on them. This allows you to avoid difficult terrain on the ground, and it is an increase to your actual running speed. All these are good things. I'd also like to point out that web gliding is not something that gives you a ton of combat, but a huge amount of mobility. And I once said on this channel that an underwhelming power set was the Spider Powers power set, because it was a little bit strange. It asked you to invest in your agility and your melee, and it didn't have a lot of combat abilities. But you know what it does have? It has a bunch of mobility, and as a result, I think it has a really nice place inside of a fuller character build. Web gliding is a reason to go into the Spider Powers power set and pick up just 2 or maybe 3 powers. It can actually be very helpful. Let's continue with the Spider Powers power set. We talked about web gliding, which is going to let you move above the ground, bypassing if it is dangerous or difficult terrain, and move at an increased speed. But another power in the Spider Powers power set gives you huge mobility, and it's web crawling. Now, web crawling is going to give you climbing speed, and it's really the only way in the game to increase your climbing speed capacity. If you were to take this along with free running, then you have vertical mobility that is faster than your ground mobility in many cases. This is a really powerful thing to take a look at, and again, it's a reason to go into the Spider Powers power set, even if you don't pick up any combat capacities inside of there. The next power that I think would really be beneficial is jump. This is a very underappreciated and not often taken power, but it gives you an immediate capacity to jump huge distances. And this can bypass the need to climb. This can bypass the issues with height requirements. It can actually be a really powerful way of solving problems. Characters that have jump can start to solve large 3-dimensional obstacles really efficiently and just start moving around the problem. Don't overlook the jump powers, and there are 3 of them to pay attention to. The next way I want to take a look at increasing mobility might be stilt steps. Stilt steps is a lot of fun. It just gives you a huge amount of vertical height. This is in the Battle Suit power set and in the Plasticity power set, and it can solve vertical problems for characters that are not flying characters. There's a lot to be said for this, and I think it is overlooked in both of these power sets, but don't ignore this one. It can give you a lot of capacity. The next thing I want to take a look at is the trait Sneaky, which automatically gives you an edge on any time you are trying to move and be hidden, and simultaneously gives trouble to anyone trying to spot you. This has 2 mechanical advantages that interact with each other. This is a great way of camouflaging a character, but I'd also like to point out that it works for any other type of movement. So this can be paired with somebody that's climbing, somebody that's walking, somebody that's flying. It interacts with any other type of movement. So pay attention to the Sneaky trait. It's a lot of fun to take, and it allows you to do some pretty incredible things. So one thing I'd like to point out about the playtest rulebook and the rules update is that there's no way to breathe underwater. There's no way to gain a particular swimming speed as presented. Now, this is the kind of thing I expect to be addressed in the full rulebook, but if that is not something that's immediately accessible, you can always take the trait Extraordinary Origin. Extraordinary Origin gives you carte blanche, essentially, to be able to find a mechanical advantage that you negotiate with your narrator for something that has to do with your heritage. And as a result, you could, if you wanted to have a water-based character, you could take somebody that has an extraordinary appearance, an extraordinary origin, but they're able to have a swimming speed equal to their running speed and can breathe underwater. And in a campaign that's going to take place near and around water a lot, this would be a really good way to go. So as you can see, there are a lot of ways of improving your mobility as a character in Marvel Multiverse. And I think every character should take at least one type of additional movement capacity beyond just increasing speed. It really benefits the entire party and your exploration, and it allows you to interact with three-dimensional environments really, really well. All right, that's what I've got for you today. As always, YouTube is literally made out of buttons. I hope you press some of them, and I'll see you next time. All right, peace.